Veltar stood in the transport ship looking out at the stars. His dark purple skin caught the light from the ship's windows. His 4 arms checked his weapons one more time. The plasma rifle felt good in his hands. The energy blade hummed softly on his belt. Everything was ready for what should be an easy mission. The Kythera Empire had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. Veltar had fought in many wars. He had seen worlds burn and enemies fall before the might of his people. No species could match them in battle. Their technology was the best. Their warriors were the strongest. This was known across all the stars. Today was different, though. Today he would fight beside humans. Humans were new to space travel. They had only learned to fly between stars about 100 years ago. Their ships were slow and ugly. Their weapons shot metal bullets instead of energy beams. The Kythera leaders thought this mission would be good for showing these new creatures how real warriors fought. The transport ship shook as it landed on the moon's surface. Veltar walked down the ramp with heavy steps. His boots made loud sounds on the metal. He was 2 meters tall and built like a living tank. Scars covered his arms from many battles. Other Kythera warriors would respect him just by looking at him. The humans were waiting near their own ship. Veltar almost laughed when he saw them. They looked so small and weak. Their skin was soft pink or brown. They had only 2 arms and 2 legs. How could such tiny creatures expect to fight? "You must be Veltar," said a human walking toward him. The creature wore a green uniform with strange marks on it. "I am Captain Kim Dae-ho. Welcome to our training exercise." Veltar looked down at the human captain. Kim Dae-ho was shorter than Veltar's chest. His hair was black and cut very short. His eyes were dark brown and calm. Too calm, Veltar thought. Why was this human not showing proper respect to a Kythera warrior? "I am Veltar of the Kythera Empire," he said in a deep voice. "I have come to observe your species in battle, though I doubt there will be much to see." Kim Dae-ho nodded but did not seem angry at the insult. "Let me introduce my team." A human female stepped forward. She was small even for a human. Her hair was tied back and she carried a strange device covered in lights and buttons. "This is Lieutenant Park So-min, our tactical officer." Park So-min looked at Veltar with sharp eyes. She did not smile or bow. She just studied him like he was some kind of puzzle to solve. "Your armor is interesting," she said. "The energy shielding must make you very hard to hurt." Veltar was surprised that this tiny creature knew about his armor's systems. He had expected humans to be ignorant about advanced technology. "Yes," he said slowly, "it can stop most weapons." "Most weapons," Park So-min repeated. She made a note on her device. "That means some weapons can still hurt you." Another human approached. This one was bigger than the others and carried many bags of equipment. Kim Dae-ho pointed to him. "Sergeant Lee Jun-ki, our explosives expert." Lee Jun-ki grinned and showed his teeth. His hands were covered in small scars and burns. "Nice to meet you, big guy. I bet your people make some really loud explosions." Veltar nodded. The Kythera did love their massive weapons. "Our plasma cannons can destroy mountains." "Mountains, huh?" Lee Jun-ki looked thoughtful. "I wonder how they work against moving targets." The last human was different from the others. She carried medical supplies and wore white markings on her uniform. Her movements were gentle and careful. "Dr. Yoon Hana," Kim Dae-ho said. "She keeps us alive and studies alien biology." Dr. Yoon Hana looked at Veltar with curious eyes. "Your people must be very strong to grow so large. How much do you weigh?" 300 kilograms, Veltar answered. He expected the humans to be impressed by his size and strength. Instead, Dr. Yoon Hana just nodded and made more notes. "That means you use a lot of energy to move around. You probably get tired faster than smaller creatures." Veltar frowned. These humans were asking strange questions. They should be asking about his victories in battle or the glory of the Kythera Empire. Instead, they wanted to know about his armor's weaknesses and how his body worked. Kim Dae-ho pointed toward a large building in the distance. "That's our target. It's an old facility built by a dead civilization. Automated defenses still guard it. Our job is to get inside and shut down the defense systems. Veltar looked at the building. It was made of black metal and had no windows. Strange towers rose from its corners. Energy fields flickered around its walls. This looked more interesting than he had expected. The defenses are strong, Park So-min said, reading from her device. Energy shields, plasma turrets, and guardian drones. The last team that tried to enter this place was destroyed in minutes. Then why are we here? Veltar asked. Because we need to learn how these old systems work, Kim Dae-ho explained. And because our leaders think it will be good training for both our species. Veltar laughed. The sound was deep and loud. Training? I have fought in real wars against real enemies. This will be like playing with children's toys. The humans looked at each other but said nothing. Veltar noticed that they did not seem worried about the mission. They also did not seem excited about fighting beside a great Kythera warrior. They just stood there checking their equipment and talking in quiet voices. Lee Jun-ki opened one of his bags and pulled out strange devices. They looked like metal balls with wires sticking out of them. Grenades, he explained when he saw Veltar watching. They make things go boom. Those are your weapons? Veltar pointed at the crude devices. Where are your energy weapons? Your plasma cannons? We prefer things that work, Park So-min said simply. Energy weapons are flashy, but bullets never run out of power. Dr. Yoon Hana checked her medical supplies. She had bandages, medicines, and strange tools that Veltar did not recognize. Are you ready? She asked the others. As ready as we can be, Kim Dae-ho replied. He looked at Veltar. Stay close to us. These defenses might be stronger than they. Look, Veltar almost laughed again. These small humans wanted him to stay close for protection. He was a Kythera warrior. He had armor that could stop starship weapons and strength that could crush steel. If anyone needed protection, it was these soft creatures with their primitive tools. The team began walking toward the black building. Veltar strode ahead of them, with confidence. His plasma rifle was charged and ready. His energy blade hummed with power. Whatever waited inside that building would learn to fear the might of the Kythera Empire. Behind him, the humans followed in a loose formation. They moved quietly and watched everything around them. Park So-min kept checking her device for energy readings. Lee Jun-ki counted his explosives. Dr. Yoon Hana scanned for signs of danger. Kim Dae-ho walked beside Veltar but said nothing. His face was calm and serious. He showed no fear of the coming battle. He also showed no excitement. It was like he was going to do a normal job instead of risking his life. As they got closer to the building, Veltar felt the first stirrings of something strange. The humans were too quiet, too calm. They should be nervous about fighting beside a superior warrior. They should be asking for his advice or protection. Instead, they acted like they had done this many times before. Like fighting deadly automated defenses was just another day of work. Like having a mighty Kythera warrior with them made no difference at all. The building's defenses suddenly came alive. Red lights flashed along the walls. A loud alarm began to sound. Energy weapons started charging with a rising whine that hurt the ears. Veltar raised his plasma rifle and prepared for easy victory. Behind him, he heard the humans getting ready too. But they made no battle cries. They said no prayers for glory. They just checked their weapons one more time and waited for the first attack. The ancient Guardian drones poured out of hidden openings in the building's walls. The Guardian drones moved faster than Veltar had expected. They were sleek metal shapes that flew through the air like angry insects. Blue energy crackled around their bodies. Their weapons charged up with a sound like breaking glass. Veltar raised his plasma rifle and fired at the nearest drone. The bright green beam hit the machine's center. He expected to see it explode into pieces. Instead, the drone's surface just glowed for a moment. Then it kept flying toward him like nothing had happened. What? Veltar fired again, and again. His powerful weapon left scorch marks on the drone's armor but did not stop it. The machine spun around and shot back. A red laser beam burned across Veltar's shoulder. His armor absorbed most of the hit, but he still felt pain. More drones poured. out of the building. Dozens of them filled the air. Their weapons began firing in all directions. Red and blue energy beams crossed the sky like deadly lightning. Veltar dove behind a rock as explosions erupted around him. This was not supposed to happen. His plasma rifle was one of the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. It could melt through starship armor. It should have destroyed these old machines easily, but the drones seemed to barely notice his attacks. Veltar heard the humans' weapons firing. Their guns made sharp cracking sounds instead of the smooth hum of energy weapons. He expected to hear them screaming in fear or calling for help. Instead, he heard calm voices giving orders. "Drones coming from the east," Park So-min called out. Her voice was steady and clear. "Count 24 targets. They're using adaptive armor." "Adaptive armor?" Kim Dae-ho asked. He was firing his rifle in short bursts. Each shot hit a different drone in exactly the same spot. "The machines learn from each attack," Park So-min explained while shooting. "Energy weapons become less effective after the first few hits, but kinetic weapons should still work." Veltar did not understand. How could these humans know so much about alien technology, and why were they not afraid? The drones were overwhelming their position. Any sane creature should be running away or calling for help. A drone swooped down at Veltar. He swung his energy blade and cut the machine in half. At least his close combat weapons still worked, but there were too many enemies. For every drone he destroyed, 2 more took its place. Lee Jun-ki appeared beside him carrying a large weapon. It looked like a metal tube with handles on the sides. "Duck!" the human shouted. Veltar dropped to the ground just as Lee Jun-ki fired. The weapon made a loud whooshing sound. A rocket flew over Veltar's head and hit a group of drones. The explosion was massive. Pieces of metal rained down everywhere. "Nice shot," Kim Dae-ho said over the radio. He did not sound surprised or excited, just satisfied, like a worker who had completed a task correctly. Veltar stared at the burning wreckage. The humans' primitive weapons were working better than his advanced technology. How was this possible? Dr. Yoon Ha-na ran across the battlefield toward a wounded human soldier. Energy beams flew around her, but she did not flinch or dodge. She just ran straight to her patient. Veltar watched in amazement as she began treating the soldier's injuries while drones attacked overhead. "Hold still," she told the wounded man. Her hands were steady as she applied bandages. "This will hurt, but you'll be fine." A drone dove at them. Veltar tried to intercept it, but he was too far away. The machine's weapons charged up to fire. Then Park So-min's rifle cracked 3 times. The drone fell out of the sky in pieces. "Thanks," Dr. Yoon Ha-na called without looking up from her patient. She kept working like nothing had happened. Veltar felt something strange in his chest. It was not pain from his injuries. It was something else. Something he had never felt before when fighting beside other warriors. The humans were not fighting like any species he had ever seen. Kithara warriors fought with passion and fury. They roared battle cries and charged their enemies head-on. Victory came through strength and courage and the will to dominate. But these humans fought differently. They were quiet and calm. They spoke in short sentences about tactics and targets. When someone was wounded, they treated the injury like a technical problem to solve. When enemies attacked, they responded with precise violence. There was no glory in their fighting. No honor or pride. They just killed enemies efficiently and moved on to the next target. It was like watching machines fight other machines. More drones emerged from the building. These ones were bigger and carried heavier weapons. Their armor was thicker and their movements more coordinated. Veltar tried to engage them, but his plasma rifle was almost useless now. The adaptive armor had learned to resist his attacks. "Fall back to secondary positions," Kim Dae-ho ordered. His team immediately began moving. They did not run in panic. They retreated in an organized pattern, covering each other and firing as they moved. Veltar followed them, confused and frustrated. He was supposed to be the superior warrior here. The humans should be following his lead, not the other way around. But his weapons were failing while theirs still worked. His tactics were useless while theirs succeeded. Park So-min set up her equipment behind a larger rock. Her device was beeping and flashing with information. "The drones are using a distributed intelligence network," she said. "They share data about our attacks and adapt in real time." "Can you disrupt their communications?" Kim Dae-ho asked. "Not from here. We'd need to get inside the building and access their control center." Lee Jun-ki checked his remaining explosives. "I can blow a hole in the wall, but we'll have to get through those drones first." Dr. Yoon Hana finished treating the wounded soldier. "He's stable but needs evacuation. The burns are severe." Kim Dae-ho nodded. "Call for pickup. We'll continue the mission with current personnel." Veltar stared at them. They were discussing the mission like it was still possible, like fighting through dozens of adaptive war machines was just another obstacle to overcome. Where was their fear? Where was their respect for the danger they faced? A new wave of drones attacked their position. These ones moved differently, using tactics they had learned from watching the previous battles. They flanked the team and attacked from multiple directions at once. Veltar found himself pinned down again. His powerful armor and weapons meant nothing against enemies that could adapt faster than he could adjust his strategy. For the first time in his long military career, he felt helpless. Then he saw something that made his blood run cold. Park So-min was surrounded by 3 drones. They had her trapped against a rock wall with no escape route. Their weapons were charging for a killing shot. Any rational creature would surrender or beg for mercy. Instead, Park So-min calmly counted the seconds until the weapons fired. At the exact right moment, she dropped to the ground. The drone's energy beams passed over her head and hit each other. 2 machines exploded from friendly fire. The third one tried to adjust its aim, but Park So-min had already rolled away and shot it in its weak spot. She stood up and brushed dust off her uniform. "Predictable targeting algorithms," she said to herself. Then she moved to her next position like nothing unusual had happened. Veltar felt that strange sensation in his chest again. It was stronger now. He realized what it was, and the knowledge terrified him more than any enemy he had ever faced. He was feeling fear. Not fear of death or pain or defeat. He had faced all of those things many times before. This was fear of something much worse. He was afraid of fighting beside creatures who treated impossible situations like math problems, who faced certain death with the same calm they showed when checking their equipment, who could calculate the exact timing needed to make enemies destroy themselves. The humans were not brave. Bravery meant feeling fear and overcoming it. These creatures seemed to have forgotten what fear was supposed to feel like. They had evolved past the need for courage because they had learned to function without emotions getting in the way. Lee Jun-ki threw one of his primitive grenades at a group of drones. The explosion was perfectly timed and positioned. 3 machines fell burning from the sky. He immediately began calculating how to use his remaining explosives for maximum effect. Dr. Yoon Ha-na continued moving across the battlefield to reach wounded soldiers. She ignored the weapons fire around her and focused only on saving lives. Each time she ran through enemy fire, she chose the exact path that would minimize her exposure time. Kim Dae-ho coordinated his team's movements with quiet efficiency. He never raised his voice or showed excitement. He just gave orders and expected them to be followed. When a drone nearly killed him, he adjusted his position by exactly 1 meter and continued fighting. These humans did not fight like warriors. They fought like living weapons that could think and adapt faster than their enemies. They had turned warfare into a science instead of an art. Veltar tried to rejoin the battle but found himself hesitating. His instincts told him to charge forward and fight with honor. But his mind was learning that such tactics would only get him killed against these adaptive machines. The humans had already figured out how to win. They were systematically destroying the drone's ability to coordinate. They were using the machine's intelligence against them. They were turning strength into weakness through pure calculation. As Veltar watched them work, he began to understand why the galaxy should fear humanity. Not because they were monsters or conquerors. The entrance to the building was a massive door made of black metal. Strange symbols covered its surface. Energy fields crackled around the edges like trapped lightning. Veltar could feel the power radiating from whatever lay beyond. Kim Dae-ho studied the door through a small device. Reinforced neutronium alloy, he said. About 3 meters thick. The locking mechanism uses quantum encryption. Lee Jun-ki whistled softly. That's going to take a lot of explosives. No, Park So-min said, looking at her scanner. Explosives won't work. The door absorbs kinetic energy and converts it to structural strength. The more we hit it, the stronger it gets. Veltar stepped forward. He had been quiet since the drone battle, thinking about what he had witnessed. Now he needed to prove that Cathara warriors still had value. Stand back. My energy blade can cut through anything. He activated his weapon. The blue energy beam extended from the hilt with a familiar hum. This blade had carved through starship hulls and enemy armor. Surely it could handle one door. Veltar pressed the blade against the metal. Sparks flew and the metal began to glow. For a moment he thought he was making progress. Then the glow faded and the metal looked exactly the same as before. Self-repairing molecular structure, Dr. Yoon Hana observed. She was scanning the door with her medical equipment. It heals damage faster than you can create it. Veltar tried again, putting all his strength behind the blade. The result was the same. The door remained untouched. His most powerful weapon was useless against this ancient technology. How do we get inside? He asked, frustrated. Park So-min was studying her readings. The door responds to biological signatures. It's looking for specific genetic markers. You mean it only opens for the creatures who built it? Kim Dae-ho asked. Not exactly. Park So-min pointed to a small panel beside the door. It's looking for any form of intelligent life, but it needs to verify that the life form is capable of understanding the consequences of entering. What kind of consequences? Veltar asked. Dr. Yoon Hana checked her scanner again. The energy readings inside are off the charts. Whatever's in there could kill us all in seconds. Lee Jun-ki grinned. Sounds like fun. Veltar stared at the human. How could he find this situation entertaining? They were facing a door that wanted to kill them, built by aliens who were probably much more advanced than either humans or Cathara. Any sane creature would be looking for another way in or calling for backup. Park So-min placed her hand on the panel. Nothing happened for several seconds. Then lights began flashing across the door's surface. The symbols glowed brighter and started rearranging themselves. It's scanning me, she said calmly. Neural patterns, genetic structure, psychological profile. It wants to know if I'm smart enough to understand what I'm getting into. The scanning process continued for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Veltar watched the lights dance across Park So-min's face. She showed no fear or impatience. She just stood there waiting for an ancient alien computer to decide if she was worthy of death. Finally, the lights stopped flashing. The door made a deep rumbling sound and began to slide open. Beyond it lay a corridor filled with blue light and strange humming sounds. Congratulations, Kim Dae-ho said. You passed their intelligence test. What happens if someone fails? Veltar asked. We probably don't want to find out, Dr. Yoon Hana replied. The team moved into the corridor. Veltar noticed immediately that his armor felt heavier. The gravity in here was stronger than outside. The air tasted metallic and made his skin tingle with static electricity. Strange machines lined the walls. They looked like nothing Veltar had ever seen. Some appeared to be growing like living things. Others shifted and changed shape as he watched. Energy flowed between them in patterns that hurt his eyes to follow. Stay in the center of the corridor, Park So-min warned. Those machines are scanning us. If we get too close, they might decide we're threats. They walked deeper into the building. The corridor branched into multiple passages. Each one led to rooms full of incomprehensible technology. Veltar saw machines that seemed to bend space around themselves. Others appeared to be manipulating time, making the air shimmer like heat waves. This civilization was much more advanced than we thought, Dr. Yoon Hana whispered. She was recording everything with her equipment. These machines are operating on principles we haven't even discovered yet. Can you tell what they do? Kim Dae-ho asked. Some of them, maybe. That one looks like it processes quantum information. That cluster over there might be manufacturing matter from pure energy. But most of this technology is beyond my understanding. Veltar. Felt small and primitive. The Kithara Empire was supposed to be the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, but compared to the builders of this place, they were like children playing with toys. The humans, however, seemed fascinated rather than intimidated. They studied each machine they passed, taking notes and making measurements. They discussed theories about how the technology might work. They showed the same calm curiosity they had displayed during the battle outside. Movement ahead, Park So-min announced. She was watching her scanner. Something big is coming this way. The team took cover behind a cluster of machines. Veltar heard heavy footsteps echoing through the corridor. Something was approaching that made the floor shake with each step. A massive shape emerged from the blue light. It was 3 times taller than Veltar and built like a walking fortress. Its body was covered in armor that seemed to be made of living metal. Energy weapons grew from its arms like deadly flowers. Its eyes glowed with intelligence that was definitely not artificial. Guardian construct, Dr. Yoon Hana breathed. It's not a machine. It's a living creature enhanced with technology. The Guardian stopped and looked directly at their hiding place. It knew they were there. Its weapons began charging with a sound like thunder building in the distance. It's going to kill us all, Veltar said. He had faced many powerful enemies, but nothing like this creature. It radiated power that made his armor's sensors scream warnings. Probably, Kim Dae-ho agreed. His voice was calm and thoughtful. But let's see what it wants first. Veltar could not believe what he was hearing. The human captain was suggesting they communicate with a creature that was obviously preparing to destroy them. Where was the battle plan? Where were the tactical preparations? Kim Dae-ho stood up and walked into the open corridor. The Guardian's weapons tracked his movement but did not fire. Yet, we're explorers, Kim Dae-ho said to the creature. We're here to learn about your civilization. The Guardian tilted its massive head. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. The words appeared directly in their minds rather than through their ears. You are children playing with forces you cannot comprehend. Why should I not destroy you now? Because destroying us won't teach you anything about our species, Kim Dae-ho replied. And you're curious about us. Otherwise you would have killed us already. Veltar was amazed by the human's reasoning. Kim Dae-ho was treating this deadly encounter like a negotiation. He was assuming the Guardian was rational and could be convinced through logic. The Guardian considered this. Your companion tried to cut through our door with primitive energy weapons. Your technology is crude and your understanding limited. What could you possibly teach us? We can show you how less advanced species solve problems, Park So-min said, stepping forward. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective. Demonstrate, the Guardian commanded. Park So-min pointed to one of the machines lining the corridor. That device processes quantum information, but it's overheating because it's trying to handle too much data at once. The Guardian's eyes flashed. How could you possibly understand our technology? I don't understand how it works, Park So-min admitted. But I can see that it's working too hard. In our technology, when a processor overheats, we either reduce the workload or improve the cooling system. She walked over to the machine and pointed to a section that was glowing brighter than the rest. If you route half the data flow through that unused processor over there, the system should run more efficiently. The Guardian was silent for a long moment. Then lights began flowing between the machines in new patterns. The overheating device dimmed to a normal glow while the unused processor began working. Interesting, the Guardian said. You solved a problem that has puzzled our maintenance systems for centuries. How? We're good at finding simple solutions to complex problems, Lee Junki said. It's what we do best. Dr. Yoon Hana stepped forward. May I ask what happened to your creators? The Guardian's expression changed. For the first time, it showed something that might have been sadness. They transcended physical existence. They became beings of pure thought and energy. But they left us behind to maintain their creations. You're lonely, Dr. Yunhana observed. The Guardian nodded slowly. We have had no contact with biological intelligence for millions of years. The machines provide companionship, but they do not understand concepts like loneliness or purpose. Veltar watched this conversation with growing amazement. The humans had turned a deadly confrontation into a therapy session. They were treating this ancient, powerful being like a patient who needed emotional support. Would you like to tell us about your creators? Kim Dae-ho asked. The Guardian led them deeper into the building. Its heavy footsteps echoed through corridors filled with impossible machines. As they walked, it told them stories about its creators. The ancient beings had been called the Eternal Ones. They had built this facility as a test for younger species. What kind of test? Dr. Yunhana asked. To see if biological intelligence could evolve beyond its primitive instincts, the Guardian explained. Most species that find this place try to conquer it or steal its technology. They fail because they think with their emotions instead of their minds. Veltar felt uncomfortable. His people had certainly planned to study this technology for military purposes. Was that what the Guardian meant by primitive thinking? They reached a vast chamber at the heart of the building. The ceiling stretched so high it disappeared into darkness. Massive machines covered the walls from floor to ceiling. Energy flowed between them in patterns that looked like neural networks in a giant brain. This is the core, the Guardian said. It controls all the building systems. It also monitors the test. What happens when someone passes the test? Kim Dae-ho asked. The Guardian's eyes flickered. No one has ever passed. But the creators left instructions. If a species proves they can think beyond their base nature, the core will share knowledge that could advance their civilization by thousands of years. Park So-min was studying her scanner. The energy readings here are incredible. This machine could power our entire world for centuries. It could do much more than that, the Guardian said. It contains the complete scientific knowledge of the Eternal Ones. Mathematics, physics, biology, technologies you cannot imagine. But it will only activate for those who prove they are worthy. Suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout the chamber. Red lights flashed along the walls. The Guardian's head snapped up in alarm. What's happening? Lee Jun-ki asked. The facility's final defense protocol has activated, the Guardian said. Its voice carried fear for the first time. Something has triggered the Doomsday System. Doomsday System? Veltar did not like the sound of that. If the core determines that a species is too dangerous to receive the Eternal One's knowledge, it activates total sterilization. The entire facility becomes a weapon designed to eliminate the threat. The chamber began to change around them. Weapons emerged from hidden panels in the walls. Energy fields sparked to life, cutting off the exits. The air itself began to hum with deadly power. Why is it activating now? Dr. Yunhana asked. She was checking her medical scanner for radiation levels. The Guardian looked directly at Veltar. Because it detected Kithra technology. Your people are classified as a conquest species. They take what they want by force and destroy what they cannot control. Veltar felt a chill of fear. But I'm not trying to conquer anything. I'm just here to learn. The system doesn't care about individual intentions, the Guardian explained. It reads the overall nature of your species, and your people have a long history of violence and domination. More weapons appeared around the chamber. These were unlike anything Veltar had seen before. They seemed to bend space around themselves, creating distortions that made his eyes water. Energy builds up in them that made his armor's sensors scream warnings. How long do we have? Kim Dae-ho asked. His voice was calm, but Veltar could see him calculating options in his mind. Perhaps 10 minutes before the weapons reach full charge, the Guardian said. Then everything in this chamber will be reduced to subatomic particles. Can you override the system? Park So-min asked. No. I am bound by the Creator's programming. I cannot interfere with the test. Veltar looked around the chamber. There was no escape. The energy fields blocked every exit. The weapons would vaporize them before they could reach the walls. They were trapped in a death trap created by beings far more advanced than any living species. Well, Lee Jun-ki said, checking his explosives. At least it'll be quick. Veltar stared at the human. How could he joke at a time like this? They were all going to die horribly, and the man was making light conversation. Dr. Yoon Ha-na was setting up her medical equipment. If anyone gets injured, before the weapons fire, I can treat them. Injured? Veltar couldn't believe what he was hearing. We're all going to be atomized in 10 minutes. What's the point of treating injuries? Because those 10 minutes still matter, she replied simply. Just because we're going to die doesn't mean we should stop trying to help each other. Kim Dae-ho was studying the chamber's layout. Guardian, you said this is a test. What exactly is being tested? The ability to think beyond base survival instincts, the Guardian answered. Most species, when faced with certain death, resort to violence or panic. They try to fight their way out or destroy everything around them. What would pass the test? Park So-min asked. The creators believed that truly advanced intelligence would accept death calmly and use their final moments to benefit others rather than themselves. Veltar felt that strange fear growing in his chest again. He could see where this conversation was leading. The humans were not looking for ways to escape. They were looking for ways to pass a test that required them to die peacefully. Guardian, Kim Dae-ho said slowly, if we pass this test, what happens to the knowledge in the core? It would be transmitted to your homeworlds. Both human and Kithara civilizations would receive the complete database of eternal knowledge. Even though the Kithara are classified as a conquest species, the test overrides all other classifications. If your mixed group passes, both species would be judged worthy. Kim Dae-ho nodded thoughtfully. So our deaths could advance both civilizations by thousands of years. Theoretically, yes. Veltar watched in horror as the humans began discussing this possibility. They were actually considering sacrificing themselves to pass an alien test. They talked about it like it was a reasonable trade-off. The knowledge would include medical advances, Dr. Yoon Ha-na mused. Diseases that kill millions of people could be cured. And energy technologies, Park So-min added. We could solve resource shortages across dozens of worlds. Not to mention the weapons technology, Lee Junki said. Though I guess that's not the point of this test. No, Kim Dae-ho agreed. I think the point is whether we can think beyond weapons and conquest. The energy weapons continued charging. Veltar could feel the power building in them. His armor's systems were detecting radiation levels that would be lethal, even without the weapons firing. They had maybe 8 minutes left. There has to be another way, Veltar said desperately. We can't just give up and die. We're not giving up, Kim Dae-ho replied. We're choosing to do something meaningful with the time we have left. Dr. Yoon Ha-na opened her medical kit and began organizing supplies. Guardian, if we pass this test, will you remember us? Yes. I will remember every detail of your final moments. Good. Then please remember that Veltar fought bravely beside us. His people deserve credit for his courage. Veltar felt tears forming in his eyes. The human doctor was thinking about his reputation even as she faced death. She wanted to make sure his species would be honored in the Guardian's memory. I want you to remember Park So-min's tactical brilliance, Kim Dae-ho added. She solved problems that had puzzled your systems for centuries. And Lee Junki's ingenuity, Park So-min said. He found creative solutions when conventional weapons failed. Remember Dr. Yoon Ha-na's compassion, Lee Junki added. She tried to heal people even when she knew it was hopeless. They were creating a memorial for each other. In their final minutes, they were making sure their individual contributions would be remembered. But they spoke about it calmly, without tears or dramatic speeches. What about Captain Kim Dae-ho? Dr. Yoon Ha-na asked. What should the Guardian remember about him? That he made the hard choice, Park So-min said. When his people needed leadership, he provided it. 6 minutes left. The weapons were glowing brighter. Veltar could smell ozone in the air as the energy built to deadly levels. Guardian, Kim Dae-ho said formally, we accept the test. We will not try to escape or destroy your facility. We will use our remaining time to demonstrate that our species can evolve beyond base survival instincts. Are you certain? The Guardian asked. Once you make this choice, I cannot help you change your minds. We're certain. Veltar looked around at the humans. They had just voted to die. All of them. Without argument or hesitation. They had decided that advancing their civilizations was worth more than their individual lives. But what terrified Veltar was not their willingness to sacrifice themselves. It was how easily they had made the decision. They had approached their own deaths the same way they approached every other problem, by analyzing the situation and choosing the most logical solution. They were not brave heroes facing death with courage. They were rational beings who had calculated that dying would produce the best outcome for the most people. Their emotions had not even entered into the decision. 5 minutes, the Guardian announced. Dr. Yoon Ha-na began recording a message on her medical scanner. To anyone who receives this transmission, the knowledge in this database represents millions of years of scientific advancement. Use it wisely. Don't let our sacrifice be wasted on more weapons or conquest. Use it to heal and build and explore. Park So-min was making her own recording. The light grew brighter until Veltar had to close his eyes. The energy weapons hummed with enough power to tear apart molecules. In seconds, everything in the chamber would be destroyed. The humans stood calmly, waiting for death to claim them. Then, something unexpected happened. The humming stopped. Veltar opened his eyes. The weapons were powering down. The deadly energy fields flickered and disappeared. The red alarm lights changed to soft blue. Throughout the chamber, machines began, operating in patterns he had never seen before. "What's happening?" he asked. The Guardian stood motionless for a long moment. Its eyes had changed from red to gold. When it spoke, its voice carried wonder and amazement. "You passed," it said simply. "In all the millions of years I have guarded this place, no species has ever willingly chosen collective benefit over individual survival. The test is complete." The massive machines around the chamber came alive with new purpose. Streams of data began flowing between them at incredible speeds. The air filled with the sound of information being processed and transmitted across the galaxy. "The complete knowledge of the Eternal Ones is being transmitted to both human and Kithara homeworlds," the Guardian explained. "Medical advances, energy technologies, space travel improvements, and philosophical wisdom gathered over eons of existence." Dr. Yoon Ha-na checked her scanner. "I'm detecting massive data transmissions. This information will revolutionize everything we know about science and technology." "How long will the transmission take?" Kim Dae-ho asked. "It is already complete," the Guardian replied. "The core operates beyond the normal flow of time. Your civilizations received the knowledge the moment you made your choice." Park So-min was studying her readings. The power requirements for that kind of transmission should have been impossible. The Eternal Ones transcended normal physical limitations, the Guardian explained. Their technology operates on principles that your current science cannot explain. But now you will have access to that understanding. Lee Jun-ki looked around the chamber. "So we don't have to die?" "Death was never the requirement," the Guardian said. "The requirement was the willingness to accept death for the benefit of others. You demonstrated that your species has evolved beyond pure self-interest." Veltar felt relief wash over him. They would live. But the relief was mixed with something else, a deep understanding of what he had witnessed. The humans had been prepared to die not because they were brave, but because they had calculated that their deaths would serve a greater good. "Guardian," Kim Dae-ho said, "you mentioned that both our species would receive this knowledge. But the Kithara were classified as a conquest species. The test judges groups, not entire civilizations," the Guardian explained. "Veltar's presence here, and his willingness to stand with you in those final moments, demonstrated that his people are capable of growth beyond their current nature." Veltar realized he had been part of the test without knowing it. His decision to stay with the humans instead of trying to save himself had influenced the outcome. "What happens now?" Dr. Yoon Ha-na asked. "Now you return to your worlds and see what your people do with the gift they have been given," the Guardian said. "The knowledge includes warnings about its misuse. Those who ignore the warnings will find that some technologies simply will not function. You mean the knowledge comes with built-in safeguards? Park So-min asked. The Eternal Ones were wise. They knew that advanced technology in the wrong hands could destroy entire civilizations. The most dangerous technologies will only work for those who have learned to use them responsibly. As they prepared to leave the chamber, Veltar found himself walking beside Kim Dae-ho. The human captain seemed as calm as ever, but Veltar had questions that needed answers. How did you know? Veltar asked. How did you know that sacrificing yourselves would pass the test? Kim Dae-ho considered the question. We didn't know for certain, but we recognized the logic behind the test. Any civilization advanced enough to build this place would want to ensure their knowledge went to species that could handle it responsibly. But you were all prepared to die based on a guess? We were prepared to die based on analysis of the available information. Sometimes that's all you have to work with. They walked in silence for a while. Then Veltar asked the question that had been troubling him since the beginning of this mission. Why don't you show fear like other species? Kim Dae-ho stopped walking and looked at Veltar directly. What makes you think we don't feel fear? You never showed it. Not during the drone attack, not when facing the Guardian, not even when facing certain death. Fear is a survival mechanism, Kim Dae-ho explained. It's designed to keep us alive in dangerous situations. But sometimes fear can prevent us from making the right choice. We've learned to acknowledge fear without letting it control our actions. So, you do feel afraid? Of course, I was terrified during that final countdown, we all were. But being afraid doesn't change the facts of a situation. It doesn't make the mathematics different. So we feel the fear, understand what it's telling us, and then do what needs to be done anyway. Veltar began to understand. The humans had not evolved beyond fear. They had evolved beyond the paralysis that fear could cause. They could feel terror and still function rationally. Dr. Yoon Hana joined their conversation. Fear is important information about our environment, but it's not a command we have to obey. We can choose how to respond to it. That's what makes your species dangerous, Veltar said. You can function normally, even when you're terrified. Is that dangerous? Park So-min asked. She had been listening to their discussion. Veltar thought about how to explain what he had learned. Most species become less rational when they're afraid. You become more rational. That means you can make correct decisions even in situations that should make correct decisions impossible. Lee Junki laughed. I never thought of it that way. But I guess you're right. Fear tells us when things are serious, so we take them seriously. They reached the building's entrance. Outside, the moon's surface looked the same as when they had arrived. But Veltar knew that everything had changed. Both human and Cathera civilizations had just received knowledge that would transform their understanding of science, technology, and philosophy. What will your people do with this knowledge? Dr. Yoon Hana asked Veltar. I don't know, he admitted. The Cathera have always believed that strength comes from dominance. This knowledge suggests that true strength comes from cooperation and sacrifice. Change is difficult for any species, Kim Dae-ho said. But now both our peoples have the opportunity to grow beyond what they were. As they boarded their transport ships, Veltar realized that his mission had accomplished something completely different from what he had expected. He had not learned about human weaknesses or observed their primitive tactics. Instead, he had discovered that humans possessed capabilities that made them unlike any species in the galaxy. They could remain rational under extreme stress. They could make decisions based on logic rather than emotion. They could sacrifice themselves for abstract principles. And they could do all of this while experiencing the same fears that paralyzed other species. During the journey back to Kithara space, Veltar wrote his report. He tried to explain what he had witnessed, but he knew his superiors would not truly understand until they experienced humans firsthand. He wrote about the tactical abilities he had observed, the humans' capacity for adaptation and problem-solving, their unusual approach to warfare and diplomacy, their technology and methods. But mostly he wrote about fear, how humans had taught him that fear was not something to overcome or ignore. It was information to be processed and incorporated into decision-making. The humans had shown him that. True courage was not the absence of fear, but the ability to function effectively despite feeling afraid. When his ship reached Kythera space, Veltar submitted his report and requested immediate leave. He needed time to process what he had learned about himself and his people. In his private quarters, he reflected on the mission that had changed his understanding of the galaxy. He had learned that fighting beside humans was not dangerous because they were violent or unpredictable. It was dangerous because they represented a form of intelligence that could solve any problem if they were willing to pay the price. They could calculate the cost of victory and pay it without hesitation. They could face extinction and use it as a tool to achieve their goals. They could remain functional when functionality should be impossible. Veltar realized that he had learned the meaning of fear by fighting beside creatures who had learned to use fear as just another source of information. They had shown him that emotions could be tools rather than masters. The galaxy had just gained access to knowledge that would transform civilization, but Veltar knew that the most important lesson was not in the ancient database. It was in watching how humans approached impossible problems. They had taught him that any challenge could be solved if you were willing to think rationally about it and pay whatever price the solution required. They had shown him that intelligence was not about being stronger or faster or more advanced than your enemies. Intelligence was about being willing to do whatever mathematics demanded, regardless of how it made you feel. As Veltar settled in for sleep,